welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today I'm going to take the face that we sketched last time and we're going to add shadows and highlights. So let's get started. Alright, so this was the face that we did last time, and just like before with the eyes, you know that I don't typically design black on white. I design with the background as being black, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that, and we're going to add on our new drawing layer, which is, again, it's in purple because I find that purple is rarely a color I typically use within a composition, and it helps me from getting confused as I try to sort it out. Alright, from there we're going to add the first layer of skin tone. So he looks a little creepy, I know, but I do kind of a base layer, especially with humans. And I mean, it's a little bit with animals too, but with animals you can be a little bit more sparse with how you're doing the fur. With humans, I try to fill it in a little more because we read it a little differently. We like it to kind of look a certain way. So then we're going to add a spot for the lips. So when I'm choosing a color for the lips, I typically will, what I'll do is I'll take the skin color and I'll just turn it a little bit more orange. So I didn't quite have a good read on the lips there. So the skin color would have been more in this range, and the lips are going to be more kind of in this range. And I find that's the easiest way to do it. It can be hard trying to choose a lip color that isn't, that doesn't look like somebody's wearing lipstick if that's not the effect you're going for. So I'll just sort of take the skin tone color here. Let's go ahead and come down. Accept. So I would just take, if the skin tone were here in this region, I'm just going to take that and select a redder color for the lips, but leave it in the same tonal range so that it looks a little bit more natural and it doesn't come off too pink like he's wearing lipstick, or bright red like he's wearing lipstick. It puts it in that same kind of range that the skin tone's in, and it looks a lot more natural from what I've found. Having said that, it can sometimes still be, you still might have to tweak it to find the right balance. Alright, and then I'm going to fill in the eyebrows and once again refill in the hair. Now we're not going to do the hair, just like I mentioned in the last video. I'll save the hair for its own separate video. Alright, now we can probably pop off the sketch. Right, so now we have the basic sketch. It looks really creepy at this stage. There aren't any shadows and highlights added yet. It's all just the base, which we start with the whites of the eyes. So just like in the eye video, we put the whites of the eyes in there, and then of course the irises. Alright, and now we really start working on the shadows and highlights. So my light source is coming from over here, right? So we have the light coming in from above and to the right, but in front of him. Now I continue flushing this out. So this is really, when I'm doing a human face, I often have several layers of highlights that I add because, one, our skin has multiple sort of colors within it, and two, that's going to help really sort of flesh it out and give it that believability the more I add into it. So, but this is the first layer, basically. I've gone through and I've added in that first layer. So, again, I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but remember our eyes are balls in sort of a circular recess in our heads, right? So it's going to have this bottom layer that's in shadow because this is the bottom side of the ball, the top layer that's in highlight because it's the top side of the ball. This backside's also in shadow because that's that backside. So that's how you would think of that. The eyes are kind of, these circular shapes in our heads. But then we have a bulge that happens here because that circular recess comes back out. So as you're drawing it, think of this as the circular shape. The nose is a bulge, obviously, in our heads. We have almost this oval coming down with a circular nose tip, and then these two little sides are also, they're going to be like semicircles where some of it is in highlight and then it goes into shadow, just like as you have that loop come down, with one side being in shadow because of where it is. Your cheeks you can kind of think of as circles here. They'll catch the light that way. Now when our cheeks are, you know, even on this far side, you can see the cheek is catching the light. But once we flesh it all the way out, it's not going to catch the light nearly as much as this side is. So this is going to be much more in highlight. You can already see that here, but right now in this particular draft, both of these sections of the cheek are roughly the same. That's going to change as we sort of flesh this out. While the cheek over here catches the light, depending on how the light's coming in, it's not going to catch as much as the side that's towards the light source. We're going to have a shadow cast by the nose, right? So this shadow is going to come down as the nose comes down, but it makes sense with the light source coming from over here, shadow going that way. But because of that, we're also going to have this section of highlight just above the lip as it goes into this cascade of shadow. As the shadow comes down, there's going to be a small section here, and you can kind of see it where it goes a little bit into shadow, where our cheek rounds. So, you know, we have this circle for our cheeks, so this back side of the circle is in shadow. And it doesn't go straight to our lips. It kind of comes out, and even here, I fixed this a little bit more. It kind of comes out in this way, where our cheeks meet the top of our lip area. It comes out away from our lips and then connects back. We can't always see it, but it's going to be in sort of a little bit of a shadow there. His chin is going to catch a highlight. And because I drew him with a cleft chin, that second side is also going to catch a little bit of that highlight. And then, of course, his ear over here, which is also in highlight. So his whole face is an oval. So you would have the highlights on this side with the shadows on this side. And then within that oval are other shapes. There's the circles for our eyes. There's the oval for our noses. There's the circular nose tip, the semicircles here, the circles for our cheeks. Our chin can sometimes be kind of a circle, or, I mean, it basically is a circle, even if it's a cleft chin like this one. So even though I have two separate highlights, which would be kind of smaller circles, it is all encompassed within a bigger circle, you know, so on and so forth. All right. So here's the first layer, and what I've done is I've softened out some of the shadow. So there's a ton of layers that I start adding in. The shadow is fine. I probably wouldn't need to add it, but I'm adding a little bit of red to the shadowed area of his face. So, you know, I've mentioned this before, skin tone, let's pop this here. You want skin tone to be warmer, because the warmer it is, the more realistic we look. But sometimes I feel like I don't go warm enough, so what I did is I took this color and I warmed it up. But I think that's too warm, and so what I do is I use both to kind of flesh out the final look. So I'll be adding more red to him. That's one of the steps I'll take as I go. And I can just draw straight over the color I've already chosen without it overpowering it. All right, so now we're going to add the lips. So the lips. The top lip is often in shadow, with the exception of some of the top section here. So some of this area here is in a little bit of a highlight, where that highlight's catching here. But the bottom lip will have a significant highlight. That's turned upwards towards the light source, whereas the bottom lip is turned away from the light source. So you're going to have that sort of area that kind of pops down here. The bottom lip is really going to catch a highlight, and as we flesh it out, it needs to be brighter than this. So this is just the preliminary part of getting the lips sort of sketched in place, just like we did with the face, and we'll be adding more to that as we go. So you can see I've added the whites of the eyes and the pupils, and I've gone ahead and added that brighter red. I mentioned before that eyes can be multiple colors, and especially where the eye catches the light, right? So we have that dull brown with that nice splash of red that really is going to make it look like it's going to pop a little bit better. And then that little jagged squiggly that I like to add into eyes for extra effect. And the highlight. And then the pinks of the eyes. And the eyebrows. So we did all of this last time. So when I'm doing hair, I often have multiple colors, especially if I'm fully fleshing it out. Sometimes do with animals as well. I didn't talk about this as much in the eye video, but I will talk about it in the hair video. And then I made him look a little bushier with this last layer here to make it look a little bit more natural. All right, now you can see I added a lot of that reddish throughout the image, right? Like you can see it through here, which is going to help him look even more alive. But it also gives me a chance to go back through and sort out any areas where I didn't get quite right with the highlights, or I thought the highlights were lacking, or the shadows were maybe not quite right. It lets me go back in and really add that in. So you can see now the shadow here is a little bit more correct. It comes out a little bit further. It's not as close to the face as the original. And we have that shadow before you have the highlight kicking in, where the lips are going to be upturned towards the light source. We're still not done. So now I really kicked it in. I felt like it wasn't quite bright enough overall. You can see that I really brightened it up significantly. Now the other thing I did here, because of the way I shaped his cheeks, right? Like we have the cheek that comes out, that sort of recesses into a strong jawline. And this isn't always the case, and again, this depends on face shape, but I've given him a little bit of a shadow down in here because this circular area is now going to be its own circle, and then you're going to have a secondary kind of circle kick in below as that strong jawline kicks in. And we have, you know, the nice strong shadow of the nose here to the nose tip. So as I'm adding a lot of this highlight in, I am allowing it to come over just that little bit because you want it to fade, but you want it to fade after it's crested the top of the nose. Just like you want that highlight on the head, because it's a circle, you want that highlight to slowly fade away, right? Like we want the really bright over here, and then we want it to sort of fade out so that it looks more natural. The same is true with the nose. You want that really bright, and then you want it to fade out, but only after it makes that crest, because the crest, that top section, is still going to be in highlight, right? Like this is going to be in highlight because it's straight out at us. So it only starts veering into shadow once it makes that turn away from the light, and it's not going to be a dramatic line. It's going to be a slow tapering out of that shadow. Now the nose should be thinner, so just make sure that as you're doing shadows and highlights, it's thinner than, you know, the nostrils. And that adds another sort of pop of red to them as well. And then kind of the final thing I'm going to do here is add a burst of highlight. So our skin takes a lot of light to it, right? So you can see the difference here when I take it off and on, is adding in that highlight adds a lot to it, right? It gives it that last little bit of pop. So as our skin can be very, our skin can catch the light in a certain way, and it allows our skin to really show off highlights, more so if it's wet, which is why the eyes catch so much and why you have such a bright highlight on them. But even still, in the lips especially, your lips are definitely going to catch a pretty bright highlight there. But the tip of the nose, the cheeks, although you can see again, this cheek has more highlight than this cheek. While this cheek still has a highlight though, it's still going to be catching that light source coming in this way, still going to be hitting here and here, but it's going to round down quicker because this whole oval, it's on that back side. So you're starting to get to that turn away from it. But you have the nose that's casting a shadow, so this can only kick in after the nose is done, you know, after we've left enough space for the nose to have its shadow. And then you're going to have that little bit of a highlight right here. You're going to have the highlight on his forehead, but that's going to quickly taper off as you start to move across. Again, just like the nose, you know, we'd pass that center point before we start tapering off the highlight on the forehead. The lips, of course, again, you're going to have the highlight on the side that the light source is on, and then you're going to taper it off as it goes the other side. The chin, I didn't add as much of a highlight. Sometimes you can. if you want the chin to be prominent, but you can, if you do it too much, you can make the chin look overwhelming. Just like with the pinks of the eyes, you don't want them to take over the composition. You don't want the chin to do that either. And then under the eyes here, which we talked about, that line right under the eyes where it'd be catching the light. The nose is an important one. It's nice and easy. Add it on the tip of the nose towards the light source and have it, really like start fading out before it gets to the tip, because that's a bright source. That's where, the light is at its most intense, is where this light is hitting. And yeah. That's how you sketch a face. Alright, so that's how you add highlights and shadows to a face. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below. I will also put a link to the video where I sketched the face in the description box below. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Thank you so much.